Yeah, so the clock is 12 now, and so I want to welcome everybody in here today to this Umeå Arctic Seminar with Ekaterina Zmyvalova. I hope I pronounced that quite right, at least.
Yes.
And she will talk about Sami children's right to their language at their schools. We will try to do it like this, that Ekaterina will hold her presentation, and then we take questions afterwards. And if you have any questions or anything that you come up with during the presentation, you can write it in the chat or directly to me, and I will pass them on to Ekaterina afterwards.
Yeah.
All right, and without further ado, I give the word to Ekaterina. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for letting me speak about this issue, and I will tell a little bit about me and my project because I'm working with this topic within my PhD project. But today I will not really concentrate that much on the issues of methodologies and other things. I will mostly talk about the real situation because I think that's the most interesting part for those ones who attend the presentation today. But I'm studying at the Department of Language Studies, and this is my third year. I actually will have my midpoint seminar in 2 weeks. So if anyone is interested in knowing more about the methods of data collection and methods of analysis and such issues, I will share the information with Angelica, and then she can send you the link. If it's interesting for you, it will be on the 4th of November. But now I want to say just a little bit of information about the number of Sami living in Russia. I'm wondering if you can hear, we have some renovation going on outside of our house. Can you hear me properly? Is everything fine? Because otherwise I can ask them to stop to do so.
It sounds good to me.
Okay, if it's fine for you, if you don't hear very well, just let me know. So we, as really in all countries where Sami people are living, we do not really have the number that is very reliable when it comes to the Sami language speakers. But in Russia, we count the total number of the indigenous peoples based on the population census results, at least for now, because now they created the information about registry, and now there's a separate law that will regulate how the Sami and other indigenous persons will be included in this list. But for now, we do have numbers from the population census where any person can basically define him or herself as Sami. So there are 1,771 persons, according to the information from the latest census, who identify themselves as Sami, and most of them are living in the Murmansk region. And Lavozero is the area where they are mostly concentrated, because if we look at the history, the Sami people, they were living in different areas of Murmansk Oblast, but then because of the relocations and different other Soviet policies like collectivization, they were placed all together in bigger locations. So therefore, Lavoisier is the area that is where the most amount of Sami people are living, together with other representatives of other indigenous peoples and other minorities. So they actually, when it comes to the number of Sami, even if it's the highest amount of Sami living in Russia, they're still a minority living in that territory. And also when it comes to Lavoisier, I will stop and we'll discuss this later in more detail, but Lavoisier is the only place where the Sami children are getting education and learn their language at school. So it's, of course, quite clear why the school is located there. So there's also a question that is asked when there's a population census, and of course people are asked about the language knowledge, and some Sami, they identify themselves as language speakers. So like basically 20 years ago, it was a little bit more than 700, like 800 persons who said that they are language speakers. And there were some studies about the language competence of these people, but they have different, let's say, competence in the language. And I'm not a linguist. My background is I'm a lawyer originally, and I also studied indigenous studies in Tromsø. So I cannot really go that much into detail, but the studies that I've read that were conducted in the Russian Sami area, they do show that actually it's only around 100 or 200 persons that can read and write in the Sami language. It's also the situation is that there are different Sami languages that are that were originally in the Russian part of Sami, and they are called Eastern Sami languages. But I'm focusing on Kildin Sami because this is the Sami language that is at least taught at school, and people who do speak the Sami language, they are mostly the Kildin Sami language speakers. So it's just so that you keep in mind that there are different really factors that are impacting on the situation with the Sami language in Lavoisier, and the fact that there were different Sami languages is one of them. And I do not really have the data regarding pupils. The amount of pupils who, I'm mostly interested in the amount of pupils who need the Sami language teaching. I do have the information about those ones who learn the Sami language, but there's no really information about the pupils, for example, from age 6 to 16, 17, who are Sami or who are representatives of, not non-Sami representatives, but would like to learn the Sami language. So, of course, it's very hard to define, but the numbers when it comes to the official statistics of the Sami language learners at school, I will present later because I was at a school, and I have the information about the grades where the Sami kids were learning the language. At least officially were taking the classes. I want to tell you a little bit about my project, and as I said, this is not really the focus of the presentation, but being a lawyer, and seeing the situation in the community that the representatives of the community, I contacted them before the research, and we discussed with them what would be important for them if I will conduct this research, what is that is bothering them, let's say. Many of them, they said they don't know their rights really, and it's very hard to claim for something if you do not know what you are basically allowed to claim for. And also, of course, there are other issues that are in question. It's of course resources, but the cultural rights, it's of course the biggest problem is the language. So I thought that what I could help with is that probably I wanted to connect the studies with analyzing the situation in the community, but with the help, of course, of my competence. So I wanted to understand what the Sami people have a right for when it comes to the language learning. And then I wanted to see how it really works and how it is implemented, how these rights are implemented. And I analyze the situation with help of different theories, but I want to see how different stakeholders effectuate the legal norms in practice. And you can see that I would like to analyze the implementation of the legal provisions, and then of course there's in between school and the legal issues, the law itself, we have the state policy that is affecting, of course, the implementation very much. So I first will analyze the sources of law and the practice of different executive bodies, and then I want to see the documents when it comes to the state policy and the expectation of the representatives of the executive bodies, how they see that the legal provisions should be effectuated in practice. And then I go to school and see how this legal provisions and the state policy is implemented. Because what I could see now, and I approached I'm analyzing the situation from historical perspective, because during different historical periods, the situation with the Sami language learning, of course, was different. And we had a period when the legal provisions were in line with the state policy, and this led really to the rise of the amount of the Sami language teachers and Sami language learners, and the creation of Sami alphabet and books in Sami language. But what we can see in some historical periods is that the legal provisions, especially during the time of the Second World War and after that, when the state efforts were focused on the war, were completely different, and completely different from the state policy. So even if we could see in legal provisions that there's no really word on Russification itself, the state policy was very different from the legal provisions. And of course, it's very interesting for me as a lawyer when I finished my legal studies, I realized that I do not really want to work only with the legal aspects when it comes to the indigenous language rights, because it's not really showing the real situation, and it's not you cannot always define where the gap is. And so in my project, I do not only analyze the situation that happens now, I also analyze the historical development of the Sami language, of the Sami language rights, of the Sami language teaching policy, because I think that the situation, the background that we have, especially from the 20th century, it really impacts very much to the situation as we have now, and it's not only about the legislator now. It's not only about the amount of the low amount of language speakers. It's not only about a little amount of Sami that are living in Lavoisier. It's also about the steps that were taken. I mean, from the 17th century until now. So that's a little bit about my project, and my hypothesis is based on the idea that we can only effectuate the rights of the Sami people in case the state policy is aiming to do so. Because what I see now, that even though if we have the historical periods in Russia, when the Sami language rights were implemented, let's say, in a better way than during other historical periods, it's still the rights of indigenous peoples, they were not the focus. It was always a different goal that was achievable or not achievable with help of language teaching, indigenous language teaching. And I'm at least on the stage when I think that it's not correct. So, but we can discuss this with you later if you do have any questions. Just a short question, maybe Angelica can answer. Can you hear me properly, and is everything fine?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, great, because I'm feeling now that I'm talking a bit like to myself.
We're listening.
Yes, so it's just good to know that you are still there. And I told you already about the objective of my project is the analysis of the legal provisions, and then I want to see how the state bodies, they implement the legal provisions, and to see how the implementation happens in the community in Russia. And of course, I hope to discuss my conclusions and maybe have some proposals. And I, of course, at this stage of my research, I already have some ideas in mind when it comes to maybe making the implementation of the legal norms more effective. As I said, I do not really want to focus very much on the issues of theoretical background methodologies that much, but I have two theories in my research that I want to use for the analysis of the information, and they're based both on the legal theories, and the second one is focusing on the issues of education and education policy implementation. When it comes to the methodologies, I do use indigenous methodologies and then legal methodologies for my research, and of course social science methods. I think maybe it will be interesting for you to know when what kind of challenges you are facing with when you when you come to the community, and these challenges are of different character, and it's connected, of course, to the political situation in Russia and the pressure on the indigenous communities. And in this case, it's always a question how much I can publish, and can I really publish the information that my respondents shared with me. So before my thesis will get published, I will ask them again if I'm allowed to publish the information they shared with me. And if they say no, then they say no, because of course I want them to be on the safe side. Also, I'm not indigenous, even if I'm Russian, and of course now we're in the situation that all Sami, they do speak Russian that I was in contact with, but still this issue of creating trustworthy relations, it took me a long time. And originally I actually thought to focus on 2 countries, to work with Russia and Sweden, and to conduct comparative analysis, but then I realized that it's so much work, and it's also so exciting for me to work with the situation that is not that much research, also because of these challenges. Because for a person who is from the other country, it's not that easy to find contact with the Sami people, and it's of course a question of language. So I decided to focus my project on the Russian side, and there are the challenges that are always in place. For example, now it's Corona issues, that I could not go for the field trip before my midpoint seminar. So I only conducted 2 out of 3 field trips. But this also makes my study the way it is. So if you will have more questions, I will talk to you about challenges later. And ethical considerations, it's we do not have ethical committee, and the requirement to apply for ethical permission in Russia. But of course, then we come to the issue of indigenous methodologies, and the question how I created how I established the contact with indigenous communities. So I contacted with them before I actually started to apply for my study, to my project. And then when I got my position, I contacted them again, and in few months after I started my position, I went to Lavoisier and discussed with the indigenous community representatives what they would like me to research and what they would like me to work with. Of course, it's always a question whom you meet. I understand this, because within the community, it's always within a small community, there are different tensions and different opinions. But I try to meet different people, different stakeholders, and I understand that, of course, it will always be criticized, but the way I try to conduct my studies is that I try to establish the contact with these people, and I always share what I collected with each of them to ask them, okay, can I really share this? Can I really publish this? Would you like to add something more? And still, even during this Corona times, we are in contact with the people that I originally established relations, and I'm still trying to find new people, new voices that could help me to conduct this research, because as I said, I'm planning to go the 3rd time for the field trip. As I touched upon the issue of different historical periods very shortly, but I can talk a little bit about it more during the questions, because I see that it's 5-7 minutes left on presentation of real situation, and I would like to tell a little bit more about this. So if you have questions, just ask me after, because I'm always happy to talk a bit about it. So in Russia, we do have options, 2 options. You can get I do not use this term in my PhD dissertation, mother tongue language teaching, but that's how it's written in the Russian legislation. You either get mother tongue language teaching, or you get tuition in the Russian language, and then it's two options. It's schools where everything is in Russian, and there are schools where the Sami or any other indigenous language or minority language is taught. So it's not, in Russia, it's not only about indigenous peoples as in many other countries. In Russia, we do have this criterion of 50,000 when you distinguish if the community is regarded officially indigenous and if it's not. And of course, Sami, they are officially recognized as indigenous people in Russia because their number is less than 2,000. So it's two options. And when it comes to the Lovozero school, the teaching, all the teaching is exercised in Russian language. They only have, if you can see in the table, extracurricular activity that during different times had a different title, but basically it was the same activities that they had. It was the Sami language teaching, or Sami culture and history and folklore. And I'm talking a lot about this activity from 2009 because before there were two schools that existed and there was a different history. In the current period, we only have one school that was before boarding school, and now it's municipal school that has no any connection officially, at least in the title, with the Sami language. And it's extracurricular activity where the kids, mostly of the Sami region, but it's not obligatory, of course, that it should be Sami kids who learn the Sami language, and this language is taught mostly from the 1st to the 4th grade, so in the beginning of the school only, and in some years they get the Sami language teaching in the 5th year if the parents would like their kids to learn the Sami language during the 5th grade. So that's the situation. That's what I told you about in 2018. It was the grade 5, but most of the time it's 1st to 4th grades. The situation is also that some grades, they are placed together. And for example, it can be sometimes if there's little amount of pupils, it's 1st and the 2nd grade that they study together, or sometimes it's kids of the 3rd and the 4th grade. And for each group, it's 34 hours per year only, 34 academic hours officially. When it's not, we come to the practice of real implementation, it's less. My field trips, I conducted 2 field trips in Lovozero. It was in 2017 and it was in 2019. The third one I planned to do now in May, but the trip was cancelled. So during my first trip, I didn't have really interview guides. I was meeting people. I was trying to meet as many people as I could, different representatives of different fields. It could be kindergarten teachers, it could be school teachers, it could be head of the school, it could be representative of the publishing house where the Sami language books are published. Just wanted to know about their opinion about my research, about their opinion on the situation with the Sami language in Murmansk Oblast. So, and then during my second trip, of course, I already had my hypothesis, I had my theories, and I conducted interviews and observations in a more structured way. And during my third trip, I will meet those ones whom I did not meet, and I have some additional questions to ask these people. There were different respondents. I can talk a little bit about them if you will have questions. I will stop on this issue, and also I'm focusing on the school, but I wanted to underline that, of course, it's the last slide with the information, and then it will be only. There are different places where the Sami language competence could be received. There are 2 kindergartens, and 1 kindergarten is the kindergarten where the Sami language is taught. The other place is the National Cultural Center, where kids of the parents who want their kids to learn the Sami language are going. There are also Sami language speakers in the community who do pass the language knowledge. So they, at least there's one person whom I met, she's given private classes. And then, of course, there's a school, there's Herzen University in St. Petersburg, where there's specialization, and they're preparing Sami language teachers, which is very important. And in Murmansk Oblast, there's also a college where you can get some competence in the Sami language. There are 2 specializations, but when it comes to the Murmansk University, there's no department where you can get language knowledge. Also, they do have the institution where the competence of the teachers is getting improved, but there are no really special courses in the Sami language now. And here is the photo of the school, and this is the National Cultural Center. That's what I told you, that it's a cultural center where different activities are organized, including Sami language classes, Sami radio. This is the place. It's also in Lavozero. It's this college, so it's not in Murmansk that people have to go. It's here. I also was in the other cultural center where handicrafts are, where there's a teacher of handicrafts. She's also Sami language teacher at kindergarten, so there are different places she's working at. So there are also kids coming and learning some things, and of course with help of Sami words, but they mostly speak Russian. It's a photo from the kindergarten. They have a special class for the Sami language teaching, and unfortunately at school they do not have such a separate class. They're different auditoriums they're going to, and when it comes to Herzen University, I do not know, because I could not go there. I was planning to go now in May, so I hope to see. I've heard that there's also a special auditorium for Sami language teaching. So this is from the kindergarten. And that's it. I'm very sorry but I think I managed within 30 minutes. I will be happy to answer all your questions. And you could see that some slides I could not really stop on, even though if I tried to be very limited with the information I'm presenting. So if you have questions about these slides, I could, of course, talk about it.
Okay, thank you very much, Ekaterina, for that very interesting presentation. Thank you. And so I will now leave it open for questions. You can either use your raise hand function or write in the chat. We have a first question from Peter Sköld. Varsågod. Go on.
Thank you. And thank you, Ekaterina, for a very interesting presentation and a very interesting topic too. I have many questions. I will pick a couple of them. First, since you have a focus on legal issues, I just wonder if everything on this language education is under national legislation, or if there is anything in the Murmansk region legislation that also kicks in here and make opportunities or the opposite. And the practical question, how is the situation with qualified teachers and textbooks for this education? I would just assume that is a challenge. It has been and still is in many other places. And maybe I should stop there. I have more questions, but I leave you with these two. Thank you.
Yeah. So when it comes to the legislation, yes, we do. We have some international legal obligations. Then we have the Russian, the Russian federal laws, and of course, based on the situation in every region, there are different regions. They do create the regional legislation, and I would say that of course we have more developed legislation in Russia in the densely populated areas with indigenous people. So, and I think that it would be fair to say that, for example, in Yamal-Nenets autonomous region, of course, it's much more developed. But there are some legal documents in the Murmansk region. For example, we do have the action plan. So the most interesting thing for me is actually the documents on how the rights of indigenous peoples within different areas should be exercised until 2024. And then, of course, we do have guidelines from the federal government, but it's also in every region decides how they do that. So for example, if you check for such a document in Murmansk region, they do have that, okay, Murmansk center that is exercising publishing, we expect from them publish such books. But yes, they mostly publish, I would not say that it's not important, but they mostly publish different translations of the books and different books of the Sami authors, but not materials for the teachers. They also have the guidelines that the Sami language should be taught at school, and that's what they're aiming for. It's also a bit of a problem because when I'm talking to the head of the school, she's saying, oh, our parents, they do not really want kids to learn the language. They want them to learn different computers, and we could spend this 30 hours for this activity. But because we do have this guideline from the region, we have to. So, but yes, basically, if I answer shortly, there are some guidelines, and in some cases they're very formal, that the implementers do not really agree with these guidelines. In some cases, I would say that they're very helpful because, of course, when you have such guidelines, it means that you have budget for this. So, and when it comes to the second question, the situation is very problematic. So it's not only about different languages that were existing in the Lavoisier area, it's also about different alphabets that those ones who identify themselves as specialists in the Sami language, they would like to be recognized as an official alphabet. And it's question only of some letters that are, of course, connected to the sounds in the Sami language. But because some books are published based on one alphabet, the activists who are supporting different alphabets, they always want even to go to the public prosecutor's office and stop publishing these books. So even small initiatives, they're very problematic because within the community, there's always disagreement. But as I said, in Kherson University, they have an opportunities for free higher education for the Sami language teachers. They do not really create books that many. When I was talking to the Sami language teacher at school, she says the materials are very old. We do not really have guidelines for now, but that's what they're. So it's Soviet heritage they're basing their lessons on, or because it's also, as I said, it's not obligatory subject there. Then the teacher is not really obliged to follow any any book. So if the language, Sami language, would be in the officially taught in Lavoisier as a subject, then it would be, of course, different requirements. And I think this is one of the problems, because there are no materials, and they cannot really, even if parents would want to do that, they cannot really make this subject official, or they have to really change a lot when it comes to them to finding agreement and within the Sami community, because it's so many tensions now. But of course, there's a lot of work done. For example, even in Tromsø University, there are some researchers that are working on the dictionaries, and I hope this will be implemented and these dictionaries will work at school. But there's a problem with both preparing the teachers and study materials.
All right, thank you for that questions. Oh no, I have echo in my, hopefully you don't have. All right, good.
As I said, it's only about the renovation outside. So if you are bothered with anything, just let me know, because I hear you perfectly fine.
No, that's great. So then we'll go on to the next question, which is from Lena Maria. Here we go.
Thank you very much, Ekaterina, for this nice presentation. And I agree with you. It was a good choice to focus on the Russian Sami population, because it's a lack of research compared to, well, for example, Norway. I wonder, you have described the pedagogic material of Russia, and in June, there was the dissertation Kristina Belanchik, where she studied the Sami education, Sami teaching in Sweden, and her finding that in Sweden it's a threat against the Sami language, that the study plane is focusing on speaking Sami language and on culture, but not on writing skills. And that means that the language will decrease by default, because if you don't practice active writing. Is it the same situation or similar in Russia?
As Kristina could go very deeply when it comes to this issue. As I said, with Russia, it's very hard to say, because it's non-obligatory language teaching. And as the head of the school says, that the teacher can decide on what the kids are really learning. And as you can imagine, from the 1st to the 4th grade, it's not really much of writing. It's mostly about communicating in the language. But it's even more of an issue that even if I could see some plans, the Sami language plans in this extracurricular activity, when you're not obliged to really follow the plan. The situation was very different when I came to the school, to class, because even if the Sami language teacher writes, she does not really write that we will focus on writing about the autumn, or we will not focus on reading about autumn. She says, okay, today's topic of the lecture is autumn. And then when I come to class, kids cannot answer her, like, let's first repeat what we learned during previous class, and then she tries to speak in Sami, and she's asking, oh, how are you, how was your day? They cannot answer. Then she's answering them in Russian, and then they try to continue in Sami. So it's not even there, and it's very hard to say if it will be there or not, because they say the situation in Sweden also, you see, is a bit different when it comes to the languages, to the languages kids learn at school. In Russia, you have 2 foreign languages that come quite early, and the kids are overloaded. They think that it's a bit too hard, because Russian language is not from the same language family as English, and English everyone is taking. So different factors are impacting, but it's also maybe some perspectives in future. So they say that we do not need language learning in the grades when we actually have to read literature, write in the language. So I would not say that at school they get such a competence. And my feeling when I could see some interviews with the representatives of different authorities, that the Sami language unfortunately became more about art, about different competitions where kids could learn by heart I don't know, fairy tale or something, and tell this in the competition, and that's what they present as what they achieved during like how they spend money, how they work within the cultural sphere. But when it comes to Herzen University, because also it's different, as I'm not a specialist, but as I understand, in Sweden there's no really specialization to be a Sami language teacher. It's mostly within field of languages or within education. In Herzen University, they do have such specialization, and it's not many students who are in such a specialization, but they do learn the Sami language as language, like they have approach that you learn the language at university and that you will teach the language. So of course it's always the question how many students will be in this specialization, but they do have specialists. And also what they underline, because actually the last 2 months I worked with Herzen University representatives, that the Sami language teachers in Herzen, they're not Sami, they're those ones who learn the Sami language because of different issues, but they're not language speakers. But those students who come to learn the Sami language, they're mostly from the Sami community, and there are quite some of them that are from the families where the Sami language was spoken at home. Also, I interviewed one of the parents who was the first one when the Sami language started to be taught at school again after the Russification policy, and he says, you know, I do know my language, I can read Sami, but not because of the school. My grandma and my mom could read and write, and they passed this language to me. And he talks about the times in the end of the 70s when kids were coming with Sami without Russian. So you can imagine what the situation is now when the kids come with Russian without Sami. So basically, it's hard to answer this question, but I assume that in the first, second grade, they try only to make them speak.
Well, thank you for expanding the situation. So
yeah.
Yeah. All right, we got a question in the chat. I can read it here from Florence Cisak. I'm not sure about the pronunciation there, but did I understand you right? Are also some non-Sami families giving their kids the opportunity to learn Sami in the Murmansk Oblast? And in this case, what is their motivation?
Yeah, so basically in Lavoisiera, there's no requirement that you have to be Sami to learn the Sami language at school. So there are some Russian children who learn the Sami language, and of course they think, okay, this is part of our culture, and it's also about that you have to have, in some cases, I would assume in Russian practice, that you have to be to take some extracurricular activities, so you have to choose which ones you take. So they take the Sami language, and for example, talking about the motivation, I think it's not only about the Sami language teaching at school, but of course, I'm focusing on this issue of motivation of being Sami language teacher and learning the Sami language at university. So, for example, with quota program, there was a Russian girl who was accepted previous year to the Sami language teachers program, and she said that I did not take this extracurricular activities, but in Lavoisier, when you live there, you still get exposed to the culture and to the language one way or another. So they believe that since they live there, they are part of this culture, even not being Sami. But in the end, of course, with this student, she said that she want to become the Sami language teacher now because she got quotas. There's no competition for her, and she does not really guarantee that she will go back to Lavoisier and will not stay in St. Petersburg. So again, the question of choices and motivations. Yep. I hope that I could answer it shortly, but I think it's different factors when you choose the Sami language for your kid, when you're non-Sami. Also, we should always remember that even though if you're not identifying yourself Sami, but you live in Lavoisier, you're likely to have some roots. You are likely to have some relatives who are Sami.
All right, thank you for that answer. And we have the next question from Karl-Gösta Ojala.
Yes, hello. So my name is Seg Ojala. I'm from Uppsala University, but sitting in Haparanda right now.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for your presentation. I think it's a really interesting project and very important as well. So I wish you all the best of luck with it, with your work. I just wanted to ask about the situation. Well, I have two questions that are sort of interrelated. So about the role of North Sami in Lavoisier or in the Kola Peninsula, and sort of about the relationship about with the use and the learning of the Eastern Sami languages, especially Kildin Sami and North Sami. And if you could say something about that, and maybe I'll take the other question at the same time because it's related. And I just thought if you could say something about if there is something special about the situation concerning indigenous language rights for the Kola Sami in relation to other of the indigenous, small numbered northern peoples in Russia, and if it's related to the fact that Sami, of course, is that's Sápmi is stretching across the countries and this collaboration with the Nordic countries.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe something about.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the questions. And when it comes to the North Sami, as I said, I'm not a linguist, but reading the materials from the studies of those linguists who, for example, Elizabeth Shallow, of course, they say that in Kildin Sami now you can already find some words that are coming from the North Sami. Even the North Sami wasn't really originally in the territory. But what I can say when I was meeting people, like for example, a teacher from the college, a teacher who is Sami language teacher in Lavoisier, they were all in Kautokeino. They were all taking these classes, the North Sami language classes. And for example, in the college, the teacher said that, you know, sometimes kids come to me and they ask me to teach North Sami to them because they see more opportunities. When they know this language, they want to go to Norway, they want to study there, and then they want to stay there. So I think that, and this is reasonable, right? I don't blame them because I think that, of course, people are always searching for opportunities, and if the North Sami language gives them the opportunity that they feel safer, that they can develop their career, I do understand the reasoning why they are asking to teach them North Sami. Also, you see, it's very hard for me to speak about the school children because the language learning they're getting, it's when they are 7. I do not really think that they have that many strong opinions. But as I say, when I'm talking to those ones who are older, they already have opinions about it. Also, the same with Kherson University students. They are coming to this program, and one of the students who was at the first grade, basically in the beginning of his studies, when he has to learn Kildin Sami, he left for half a year to Norway to learn the North Sami because the opportunities were there. Because there's, as I understand, there are always money from the Norwegian side that they are ready to take Russian Sami to support language learning, and the Russian Sami, they take this opportunity. And also I talked to a student, so this student who was already in Norway, he traveled to Norway a year ago, and then a student of the first grade, I talked to him in May. He hoped that the corona restrictions will be over and he will go this August also. And he said, originally I wanted to go to Buda, but to Buda, there was a North to North program that is competitive. But if I go to Norway to learn the Sami language, there's no competition. There's money for me. So he goes because he wants to see another country, he wants to learn another language, and it's highly supported by the Norwegian side, and he takes this opportunity. So I think we can clearly see this, and I myself, I was born in Arkhangelsk in the north of Russia, and I also went to indigenous studies in Tromsø because of the northern program, because of the Norwegian support. And I'm researching issues in Russia now, but I decided, I mean, there was no, of course, position in the Sami studies, but I got the one that is in Umeå, and my point is that even though if I'm trying to help to the communities in Russia, I stay in Europe, and so I will never blame people with Sami kids who want their opportunities to be developed, who want support, and they do. If they do not get this support, they search this support somewhere else. And I think, yeah, there's a strong connection. They all know about this opportunity to go to Norway. When it comes to the rights, I think, yes, it's interesting question, and you can see that during different periods of time, historical time, the situation with the language rights was different. The Sami got recognition in the 20s, in the 1920s, when they were included in the official list, and then all the indigenous communities, they got their language, they got their rights, because to build a socialism, you have to have education in your own language to understand what socialism is. But now it's clearly that, as I said to Peter, I think that it's when the community is bigger, you get more support, you have also more financing, especially if the territory is naturally rich. It's always companies want to find some compromise and support you. And in Lvovozero, there's no such opportunity, but as you said yourself, there are the Sami living in other countries. So a lot of projects are really paid by other countries. For example, National Cultural Center is built because of the Norwegian support. Exchange programs, they go because of the support, Norwegian support. I know that the kindergarten teacher, she went to Finland to see how language nests are working in Finland. So I do think that it's very important that there is such money, but it's also, we have to remember that now in Russia we have foreign agent law, and we do have this problem with foreign financing of NGOs, that it's not that easy anymore to, even if there are money there, to get this money. because people are scared. They're afraid to be in prison. They're afraid that their organizations, NGOs, will be closed, and so on. But I think that there's still some support from other countries where Sami people live, and of course they want Kildin Sami at least to survive.
Okay, I am
Thank you.
very sorry to have to interrupt here, but we are running out of time. So thank you again very much, Ekaterina, for your presentations, and thank you everyone who has had any questions, and thank you for all the answers you have given us. And I also would like to take the time to promote the next Umeå Arctic Seminar, which will be on November the 20th, held by Lina Polvi Sjöberg, and she will talk about how ice and ice breakup shape the subarctic streams. So I hope we'll see each other again then. And once again, thank you everyone for attending today, and have a great weekend.
Thanks.
Take care.